Welcome to the Business and Enterprise Systems Mission Success Podcast, where a conversation about things happening at BES and other topics of interest. Today, we have a very special guest, Miss Priscilla Merriweather. Miss Merriweather is the program manager for Eagle Eye, and we've got several things we're going to cover today. So, Miss Merriweather, good day to you, and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So, I want to get into this first of all with Eagle Eye, with your entire career. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. How did you get to where you are today? What all are you doing today?
All right, great. So I'm a software engineer by trade, and currently I am an acquisition program manager for the Eagle Eye program, as you mentioned. And it's actually a pilot program. And how it started is Executive 14028 about securing the software supply chain. So BES knew that we didn't have anything in place. So we decided to start this pilot program to look at ways to help secure our software supply chain. So I was chosen to be the program manager for this. And two, as I went on to the ATAC program and got involved with that problem statement and came back to the office, I still see how Eagle Eye can help enforce some of the things that we're trying to do on that side, which is integrate generative AI into BES and to the Air Force.
Okay. And I love that you brought that up because really that's going to be the bulk of our conversation today. We call it ATAC, but that's the Advanced Tactical Acquisition Corps. And that's a
Yes.
special training process. I don't know. Tell us about it. How did this opportunity come up? Who were the people that kind of gave you the encouragement or the endorsements to take this, to tackle this? Really, it's a big deal. So first of all, congratulations on being selected, but tell us all about it.
Okay, so twice a year we get an announcement to enroll. So actually, it was one of the things that I saw that came into my inbox, and I read the background of it, and it piqued my interest. I was interested in it. I will say, being from Gunter, I was a little bit hesitant because it's a 14-week TDY. So I was away from home for 14 weeks. However, the mission spoke to me because it has three pillars: leadership, enrichment, and a problem statement. So it piqued my interest in wanting to learn more about it and to be more involved in it. So I applied, and you have to get your first level supervisor endorsement because you will be gone for that long. So they have to endorse you. And my supervisor, once I went to him with it, he agreed that it's something that I should apply for, and I did.
Awesome. So 14 weeks, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second, but I know in that entire process, you're coming together with a team from around the Air Force, uh,
Yes,
a civilian, military, or a combination of,
both.
okay.
It's civilian and military from around, and they try to do with different different work backgrounds. So I'm a program manager. We had engineers, and we actually had a physicist. We had a human psychologist.
Okay.
We had logistics managers. So there is a diverse group of us who came together to work on a problem statement.
Now you talk about this. You've got this great cohort with a team from all over the Air Force, civilian and military, and you're coming together to solve this real world problem. So, what was the problem you guys were working on together as a cohort?
Okay, so first of all, we were the first cohort. Cohort 17 was the first cohort to have two problem statements, and they both had to do with generative AI. So we, as a cohort, had to combine the problem statements to make it to one solvable problem statement. So essentially, what we boil that problem statement down to is how can AFLCMC accelerate innovation and stay competitive through a trained and equipped workforce utilizing Gen AI tools at the appropriate security level for their task. So that was a mouthful. However, it's a real problem, right? Because
That's
we
why it took you
know
14 weeks to work on it.
absolutely, absolutely. And so um we know that Gen AI is picking up in industry, right? And so for Air Force and for DoD, it's like, hey, we can't stay behind the curve. Like, we got to move forward. So that was the real thing that we were trying to solve for AFL MCNC.
Okay. So you've got this cohort, and this is not like going to summer camp or picking teams on the playground. So what was it like to gather with a group of people? You mentioned a physicist and a psychologist, much less, engineers. You've got this diverse group of people. So how did you guys come together at such a large scale to build a team, to determine who would play which role, or um, really who the decision makers would be? You've got a group of leaders, and whenever you get a group of leaders together, who emerged? How did you guys play nice? Let's just put it that way.
All right. So I will say the cohort organizers, Rich Tillman and Hillary Tebow. So since this is the 17th cohort, they have some lessons learned. So they've already structured to where each week everyone gets to be a team leader for a week. So
Gotcha.
we just had to choose our week. So that kind of solved that problem.
Yeah.
All of us leaders, not trying to take over and do it, do all the work. So each one of us had a week to lead. And so from that, again, because it's a diverse group of leaders coming together, we did have to go through the normal stages of organizing, norming, forming, and of course the storming, right? But once you go through that, we left. I mean, I think we all left as, that was a memorable experience for all of us. We left as being able, knowing that we have someone out there in other organizations that we can reach to, and that we went through this experience together.
Right. So this all work and no play, or did you guys have downtime? How did you interact outside of the project?
Okay, so absolutely, we had downtime. So the enrichment part. So during the enrichment part, it was three of us who weren't from Wright Pat. So this takes place at Wright Patterson. So there was three of us who were not from there, and they have two cohorts a year. Typically, the beginning of the year, they have more people from outside of Wright Patterson,
Mhm.
and as the funds dwindle down, they have to cut on the TDY fund. So then it's less people from outside. So that's why during this cohort, it was only three of us from outside. However, it was a total of nine. The other nine of them who were from Wright Patterson, they were still from different organizations. So they did not know each other. So still, although they worked on the same base, they did not know each other. So they all
Yeah.
came together. But some of the enrichment included going on field trips, learning about the area, the Wright Brothers Museum that was there in Wright Patterson. We went to AFRL, the Air Force Research Lab. We went to AFWorks. During this time, there were two trips to DC to outbrief the Honorable Hunter at the Pentagon. And while we were there, we did a heritage tour for
Mhm.
some of us who had not been, to DC to see, the heritage that was there in DC. So there were definitely opportunities to get some enrichment in the learning and to have fun. On the weekends were ours. There were a couple of weekends where I were able to come back home. Of course, that was at my expense, but I
Right.
was still able to come back home. So on the weekend belongs to you. However, you're there to do a job. So as long as you get your studies, because there is homework involved, because again, we have such short amount of time to get something done. But you do have your free time as well.
Mhm. And do I understand this was August to November, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so you're a few months out from this. Do you still have any contact with others in your cohort? Do you guys keep in touch or collaborate still, or how does that work?
So yes, we still have a group on Teams, and two, I believe that we were the first cohort to have outbrief past our time. So our time officially ended November 22nd, so literally the week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And there were a few outstanding things that, because of what we were doing, Lieutenant General Shipton was interested in some follow up. Like, she'd given us some people to talk to, and she was interested in an outbrief on how that happened. You know what happened with that. So after the holidays, we met again, I think twice, as a cohort, as time permitted. Not everyone, had the
Mm.
time once we were dispersed back to our work centers, but there were a few of us who were able to join in and do an outbrief. So our work shows the importance of what we were doing. And two, there are a few of us that still keep in contact, via cell phone. I check in with a few of them often.
Yeah. You mentioned these three pillars of leadership, enrichment, and problem statement. So, uh, can you go a little bit deeper into those and what did that look like um, throughout the 14 weeks?
Okay, so the problem statement is the one that brings us together and brings us together and what we have to work on these 14 weeks. But the enrichment and the leadership skills and classes that we get help build us as individuals and to help us with our problem statement. So, for instance, for 1 week, we went to the University of Tennessee with one of the instructors from their business department there at Tennessee, and there we met three additional people that were from that was from industry. One, a guy worked in the logistics for, not software supply chain, but in the supply chain for Target. We
Mm.
met a communications guy that had a local radio station there, Halloran Hill, and we met the CEO, or no, one of the former CEOs of Bush's Baked Beans, but he was a family CEO. So we had those opportunities to interact with people from government industry, from the outside industry, and all of that interaction with them gave us nuggets on, how to be leaders in our own right, and also gave us nuggets on helping with the problem statement that we had.
Gotcha. I know as we've been uh, swapping messages preparing for this episode, you mentioned something about leadership philosophy. So, how
Yeah.
did this shape your leadership philosophy? Uh, do you come back after this 14 weeks with a different perspective or with a sharpened perspective on leadership? Discuss that.
Yeah. So certainly a sharpened perspective on leadership. I've taken some other leadership classes that the Air Force has afforded me to take. And it kind of had me thinking in a way on how I like to lead, and two, just my personal philosophy on, how I interact with people. But these other classes, kind of put the keys, the puzzle together for me.
Mm.
So we all had to do a leadership philosophy. And so after researching leadership philosophy, I realized that my leadership philosophy is situational because I believe everyone is individual. Every obstacle, every problem is unique. However, there may be some things that tie them together. So I like to assess the situation, understand the facts about it, and make a decision. Now, as I do in my personal life, once I make a decision, I make a decision based on the information I have. And two, I understand that some decision has to be made quick. And as a leader, you have to be equipped enough to know that there's just some skills you have to be able to think on your feet, right? And to own it, right? We don't get it right all the time, but sometimes a decision has to be made. And as a leader, that falls on you. And two, leadership is all about being a follower, being servant leaders to the people or the processes that you're over. That's in your line of responsibility. So in being a great leader, you also have to know that your people are your greatest asset. So that's what I believe, and that's what I go by. So in any mission that I have, I believe my people are my greatest asset. And two, if you take care of the people will take care of you. And understanding and having the right people in the right position to do the job for you.
That's so good. So good. And this next question is really a little difficult one as we start to wrap up here, because you've already just been giving us such great feedback. But what are two or three of the biggest takeaways, or what are some lessons or skills that you brought home, or any self-discovery? How could you uh, meet the person that's a candidate for the next ATAC cohort and say, "This is how I came away from it a better leader"? What would you share with them?
Okay, certainly I would say, first of all, don't be afraid to go because don't let the 14-week TDY scare you. It will
Yeah.
go quickly. I remember the first day we get in there, and one of the young ladies that run the group, she said, "Hey, it's going to go by fast." And I'm sitting there thinking, like, no way. Um, but it actually did go by fast. So I would say don't let that, don't let that be a hindrance to you, number one. Number two, if you're open to the process, be open to the process. There's a lot to learn, and even a lot to learn about yourself. Like, I thought I was very self-aware, but I've never been away that long from my family, and two, just from work. So that kind of had me, just looking at, there was some personal growth that happened during that time for me. And two, I have a child, a minor child that was at home. But of course, you have family behind you. My husband, he took care of that. So you have to have that group, that's where your community comes in, is important. So that if you have that in place, or if not, ensure that you have that in place. If you have obligations at home that has to be taken care of. And then number three, again, go for it, because you will learn a lot. It's just so many things. So there was one nugget in Tennessee. One of the guys told us, about communication, right? He called it connecting, because with communication, it's communication and connection. So you can communicate with anyone once you find that connection. So, it had a light bulb go off. It's like, you know what? That is true. And some of the articles we read about the art of persuasion, right? Again, which also connects to connecting to someone to communicate, because you have to find that common ground. When you're going into these meetings for negotiation, when you're going in asking your sponsor for more money for the program, right? Again, they just want to make sure it's working. They sometimes don't understand the technical debt that has to get cleaned up in order to make the application run. It's like, no, I just need my requirements. But you have to, help them understand that, hey, if this doesn't get tended to, it won't run properly for you. So all those tools of learning how to communicate, learning how to negotiate are invaluable for the Air Force, for your work, and also for your personal life. So again, it was one in a lifetime experience thus far in my career. And also, you had an opportunity to meet with the Honorable Hunter, Lieutenant General Shipton. So we had an opportunity to meet with people that we don't normally meet every day in our everyday work. So that they gave us our full attention. And sometimes it was only 30 minutes, but they still took the time to talk to us and give us insight from their perspective. So you don't get that every day at this level in your career.
Right. So it sounds like you enjoyed it.
I did. I did.
That's awesome. Ms. Merriweather, thank you for this. I think you've given us a lot of information, especially for anybody that's ever considering ATAC. This could be a recruitment video for sure. So thank you for taking the time to join us today. And thank you all for joining us for the BES Mission Success Podcast. At BES, we run the systems that run the Department of the Air Force, moving money, manpower, and materiel. Until next time, good day.